Hey guys, Dave and Len here. We just played Avalon Hills Stalingrad from 1963. We've both played this game over the years. I've played it several times over the years. He's probably played it 100 times.
50 or 60.
Oh, 50, alright. But the game, the mechanics are great. I mean, especially for that old of a game, but it's set up so it's very hard for the Germans to win, especially if the German player has never played the game before and doesn't know the nuances of the terrain. If you're a new German player playing against an experienced Russian player, the likelihood of your victory is zero, literally zero, if it's an experienced Russian player and you've never played this game before. The combat results table heavily favors the defender, and the terrain heavily favors the defender, and there is a hell of a lot of terrain that favors the defender. And anytime you attack from a space with a river, the enemy is doubled, or like most war games, if you attack a town, he's doubled. So there's too many ways for the Russians to get doubled on defense and stuff. So I think the mechanics are great, but the actual game itself is not good. A lot of people are going to be mad that I said that, because a lot of people like this game, but it's not a good game. The mechanics are great. It was a forerunner to all the modern war games, but it's not a good game, though. What do you think, Len?
Okay, yeah, it was a forerunner, and I think there have been other titles. I think there's one, Avalon Hill, called the Russian Campaign. That's almost practically on the scale, but they have improvements.
Does that this one also, one thing I want to mention, it does not feel like a Stalingrad game. It just feels like any old East Front game that just happens to have no air power or anything. But
yeah, no air power.
It doesn't feel like a Stalingrad game at all.
Yeah, because what this needed was a mechanized movement phase, so the Germans could start surrounding the Russian forces, forming all these nice pockets, and to kill them for free.
Mm-hmm. And in the beginning of the Eastern Front campaign, the Russians were running or surrendering like crazy, and so this really needed like morale rules, because the Russian units are tough in this, and in most cases, overall, they have higher strength and defense than the German units on average. So it needed a morale rule, which I think would have balanced things out, where the Germans get a strong morale where they're highly unlikely to rout, but the Russians are much more likely, at least in for the first 10 turns, and then as the war went on, then he'd make it where the Russians had a higher morale, but I think that would have helped too.
I know in the Russian campaign they have a rule that if your units are eliminated by being isolated, you're not eligible to be rebuilt.
Oh, that's good.
Which would reduce the pool in which the Soviet, and usually it's the Soviets who are surrounded, at least in this, so that reduces the pool for replacements. And also, well, I had a complaint that following what he did was legal in game terms. He had these units sweeping around Moscow, and there was one force that went to Stalingrad.
Yeah.
In game terms, he did was correct, but in real life, these armies were dependent on the railroads, and to have these like broad sweeps, and
but yeah, the only chance the Germans have is if they really know the terrain on the board, and if they're able to get good rolls and take the victory point cities early, because each time you take one of those cities, or if you get in the zone of control, then the Russians don't get any replacements from that city that turn. But another thing that hurts the Germans too is combat is compulsory, so you can't like move next to Stalingrad and not attack and just keep it in your zone of control so they don't get points. You have to attack, but the units on Stalingrad are doubled, so it's a difficult attack. And if your dice like to roll sixes in this game, you're going to lose too.
Because if you didn't have to attack, you could put like a couple units on one side and then a couple more units on the other side, and you have an isolated pocket. Because to win this game, you have to use the space to surround the units. The Germans have to do, of course, if the Soviets do it, then it helps them even more. Because sometimes they need to do like a counterattack occasionally to bump off a few isolated units. Because you notice I was doing that a few times to you. He
Yep.
usually almost always broke out.
Yeah, but the game was pretty much decided by the second turn. I mean, the first couple turns I lost a lot of units because I had to attack from river squares. Otherwise, I would have went nowhere, so I lost a lot of units from that. So really, by turn 1, maybe turn 2, I knew that my likelihood of winning was pretty remote. So it's like kind of like it's like one of those Columbia block games, and that the game's decided early, but it takes forever to end because of the non-stop reinforcements.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't go and attack my reinforcement hex, because I only had a few units there, and then you would have really screwed me over.
Actually, I probably would have if I was inexperienced. But I knew that, all that would happen was that you bring back some units and, surround me, and in a few turns you could bump me off, and or else an exchange would even be good for you. But I also, what you probably don't realize is that I was stretched until the snow started falling. I was stretched on the defense because a lot. You notice a lot of times I rarely was stacking 3 high. I'd be lucky if I get to have enough units covering all the zones of control. So it wasn't worth the gamble.
All right. So, what do you think of it overall? Like I said, I think the mechanics are great. It's just a poor execution, not a good game. What do you think?
Yeah, just better combat. A little house rules about zones of control. You don't have to attack. Mechanized unit phase.
Yeah, that would fix the game, or like I said, a morale mechanic would have helped too.
Yeah. So just a few things like that would do.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll have a new review next week. Have a good evening.